back to my channel. My name is Lynn, and in today's video I'm going to talk about exam preparation techniques and exam revision techniques that I used in high school during my application to Oxford and in Oxford as well. So my tip number one is to start early and make sure you create a study plan. Now, the reason why this is so important is because then you will be able to take a long time to study and you don't have to cram everything in within a night or two or a week or two before the exam. Creating a study plan also allows you to explore all the topics that might come up in an exam, and then you will be able to study with much more strategy, more efficiently and effectively. It also allows you to be able to use some of the evidence-based learning techniques. That is also my tip number two. So use evidence-based learning strategies such as active recall and spaced repetition. Now, what is active recall? Active recall is a study technique for you to be able to study by questioning yourself and by trying to answer those questions just like in an exam setting. So, for example, passive learning might be highlighting the text from your textbook or to write notes while your textbook is open. While active learning is answering questions using flashcards, so practicing the act of recalling the answers to the questions that you pose to yourself and you would get in an exam. So this practice actually really helps you to be able to perform during the exam and lessen your stress, because it's very similar to what you would do in an exam. Whereas if you study passively, you might think that you know the material, but very often you might find that you don't actually know the material. You just think that you know because you already seen it in the textbook or in your notes. So make sure that you practice active recall instead of passive learning to make sure that you can perform during the exam just like you perform at home. And this actually leads me to spaced repetition. So spaced repetition makes use of flashcards and it leverages the psychological phenomenon called spacing. The idea behind it is you start revising and you see flashcards just as you're about to forget them. So for example, if you were to do it paper-based, you would use the Leitner technique, which is you have several boxes and all the flashcards start out in the first box. So with the first box, you review those cards, and if you answer them correctly, you put them onto the next box. The next box might be something you review 10 minutes later, and if you answer correctly again, you put the flashcard into the next box, which is something you review in an hour. But if you answer incorrectly, you put it back into the first box and review it again within 1 minute. And so these time intervals will increase. The first one might be 1 minute, then 10 minutes, then an hour, then a day, a week, a month, and then 6 months. So every single time, if you answer incorrectly, you put that flashcard back into the first box and make sure that you relearn that flashcard again. This really makes sure that you remember the material for a long time, and there is scientific evidence behind the fact that this will help you to learn in much less time, but in a much quicker pace. I like to use a digital version, so I use this program called Anki. This Anki software is a software that makes use of the spaced repetition technique, and it also allows you to be able to add many cards at once without having to have the physical cards with you. So you can study on your computer or on your phone or on your laptop, and you can actually use them on the way. And I found that really good because you can practice while you're waiting in line or if you're waiting at the doctor's as well. You can input cards just as if you would with a paper-based method, but then it takes care of all of the scheduling for you. So you only need to review the cards that it gives you that day. You don't have to worry about counting them. You don't have to worry about sorting them, because you will be saying whether you answered that correctly or incorrectly, if it was hard, easy, or medium. So with that information, it will automatically give you a schedule for you to study, and you don't have to think about managing something paper-based. So I really, really like this software, and I encourage you to try this out, especially with language learning or things that you have to remember. So for history exams, you can use it for dates or for events. And for language learning, you can use it for vocabulary. And there are so many other applications that you can use it for. And I really find that using this Anki software speeds up your learning process. It makes it so much easier to learn these things by heart, and it makes it so much less of an arduous process to learn for exam. But then again, this process needs time, so don't start learning only a month before the exam. This will not be able to help you to its full potential, but rather try it 6 months before the exam or throughout the whole year, because then you will be able to learn these materials and you don't have to specifically learn them for the exam. So my next tip is to do lots of past papers. This really allows you to familiarize yourself with the structure of the exam and to make sure that you know what kind of questions can be expected. I use this a lot for my Oxford preparation and during my Oxford years as well. And I'm really sorry that I threw that out because I would love to show you how it looked like. But basically, I always got a notebook for each of the subjects or each of the exams that I had to take. Then I would print out all of the past papers that I had access to. The next thing I would do is cut up those pieces of papers into singular questions that would be in an exam. And for each page or each 2 pages in the notebook, I would stick one of these questions on the top. And the reason why this really helped me was because I could always do the solutions under the question and then use the official solutions to correct myself, highlight mistakes, and make notes about things that I want to remember for the future. And it really helps during the revision process because I often found that if I didn't print it out and stick it onto the page, it took a lot of time for me to later go back, check the year, check what question it was, go back, search for that question to make sure that I knew what question a solution was for. With this, you really see everything in one place, and it really helps you when you try to go back and try to look for a solution or a type of question you've already solved before, because then you can just quickly look at the questions without having to really look back on your laptop. Another thing that this really helps in is you can really see your progress, because as you go through the past papers, you can look back, and at the beginning you might not be able to solve the question well, or you might not get a lot of marks. But with this, you can see that after 2 months of practicing or after a couple of weeks of practicing, you get a lot more marks and you're able to answer a lot more questions. This method also really helps you to be able to see the structure of the exam. So you might see that, for example, the exam has multiple choice questions and long based questions as well. And then you might see that the multiple choice questions take away a lot of your time, but they don't give you as many marks as if you were to do the long questions. And because of that, I think that it's really important for you to go through a lot of past papers and you make sure you have your strategy on point, but also for you to practice efficiently and effectively without having to scramble around to see what kind of questions there were in the past or what kind of things you had to do to solve that question. And that actually leads me to my next tip, which is make sure you understand what you're doing and make sure you have the skills behind the exam. Don't just study for the exam, because then you might get a high score, but you don't have the skills behind it. So this is something I often see people do, which is preparing for an IELTS language exam, for example. I see a lot of people spending years and years preparing for the IELTS exam, but I personally don't find that very efficient because the knowledge behind the language exam is the English language, and that is a skill you have to learn. And I see a lot of students who might pass the IELTS exam with very good scores, but then they find out that they're not able to use the language outside the realms of that exam. So they might be very good at the strategy. They might know all of the types of questions and how to answer them to get good marks. But then again, once they start speaking outside of that realm of the IELTS language framework, then they find that they're unable to speak and they don't have those skills to back it up with. Similarly, with STEM questions, people often find that they are able to solve the questions, but they don't understand the concepts behind them. And that's really important because if the exam structure changes, or if there's an unexpected question, or they just phrase the question a bit differently, then if you truly understand the material, you're still able to get good scores. So make sure that you really understand what you're doing instead of just being able to solve the questions, because at the end of the day, that is the skill that you will use later on, and there are no shortcuts to getting that skill through an exam. Now, my tip number 5 is to create mental associations. For example, a lot of people might make use of stories because the human mind easily remembers stories that you make up. So try to use that to your advantage. Make a story out of the different things that you have to learn. For example, people might associate certain dates with certain sequences, or some events with certain colors or numbers, and that really helps you to be able to learn the thing without having to rely on the dry facts that you just learn by heart. Another thing you can use is mnemonics. So for example, SMART goals, everyone has heard of that, but SMART stands for specific, measurable, actionable, result-oriented, and time-bound. And it's so much easier to just remember SMART than to remember 5 of those facts. Obviously, you still have to know 5 of those, but it's much easier to recall without any missing if you have that mnemonic of SMART. So similarly, do something that will help you remember all of the facts that you need to remember for your exam. And you can really use your creativity here. Whatever resonates with you, whatever you find easier to remember, just try to experiment with it and try to find what helps you to remember all of those facts at once. And my last tip, which is my most important tip, is to have some time to rest so you can consolidate your knowledge. And the reason why this is so important is if you just think about a runner who's running for a long distance, then do you think it would be more efficient for that person to run for a long time and try to reach their destination without any rest, any stopping, any recuperating? Or do you think it would be more efficient for that person to try to rest a bit once they are tired, and then they can start again with fresh energy? And it's just very similar with mental exhaustion. You cannot study all the time because that will not be efficient. There will be no time for you to consolidate your knowledge and also take care of yourself. So make sure that you take care of yourself by staying active, eating healthy, and resting in between study sessions so you can best consolidate your knowledge later on. So I hope that this video helped you to revise for your exams and to get to know some more study techniques that might help you in your next exam. Obviously, there's no one-size-fits-all solution to this because everyone learns at a different pace. Everyone is different in what sticks in their mind. So make sure to experiment, and there's a lot of creativity around here. You can try to experiment with different active recall techniques or different spaced repetition techniques. You might find that the digital world works better for you, or you might like to have colorful flashcards on paper and you might enjoy the process of making that. So really just try around different things. Make sure you experiment so you can find out what works best for you. I myself wasn't the best exam taker, but that is also a skill that you can improve over time, and while you're experimenting with these techniques, you can really find out what sticks and what doesn't. So I hope that this was really useful for you. Make sure to hit the like button to show your support and subscribe for more videos on university, career tips, and university application. Bye guys, see you in the next video.